Good morning, everyone. This is Dana Parsons. Welcome to the Coronavirus Weekly Member Call. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I want to thank, we've had a little adjustment in our presentation today since the recommendations for assisted living reopening were released yesterday. I'm pleased to have Tara Ragland join us today to provide an overview of those recommendations. I also want to thank everyone for the questions that you provided for the nursing home reopening guidance. We provided those to Sarah with the Department of Health, Lineberger. The questions continue to come in, so I want to let you know that the July 1st call will be a continued discussion about the nursing home reopening guidance. So July 1st will also be focusing on that. So with that said, I'd like to pass it over to Tara, and thank you so much for joining us today, Tara. Over to you. And Tara, if you're on the phone, you may need to *6.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks so much for joining us, Tara.
Okay, I'm just trying to get myself set up here. It doesn't seem to helps to turn up the volume. Maybe that's the problem. First world
Well,
issue.
we can hear you very well.
Okay. All right. So, how's everybody doing? So sorry it took me a minute here. So I guess everybody realizes we sent out our recommendations for reopening yesterday. Everybody got those? So understanding that every assisted living is very unique. You know, first, I think we want to just thank everybody for all the work that you guys are doing. I know that these are, I don't know how many times we've said it, how many times we've heard it. It's just unprecedented times. I think we're all working under very unique circumstances, and folks are just doing things that we probably never thought we would be doing. You guys have just done an amazing job caring for our most vulnerable folks. So we are just extremely honored to be in your presence, and just thank you for everything you're doing. So we've got quite a bit of information that we put out, and you know, we've been on calls today with our local health departments and been in communication a lot with LeadingAge as they're rolling out a lot of their information, and CMS has put out information, as you'll hear from folks today. And I think we as we kind of go through the phases of reopening, we see Virginia start to, you know, open up and maybe get back to the new normal. We just want to caution folks in assisted living centers that, you know, we have a unique set of circumstances, and every assisted living is different. And so, you know, as we start to lessen the requirements and we see folks start to relax the standards, we just want to make sure that everybody is just aware, one, that you don't have to kind of go through the same process as everybody else. We understand folks in different areas have a whole different set of circumstances that they may be dealing with. You might see something different in Southwest Virginia than you see in Northern Virginia. So, you know, we're just asking each individual facility just to consider the reopening criteria outlined, you know, in the guidance and the phases based on your own specific circumstances, with the, you know, and always with the end in mind of, you know, the residents in your care, which I'm sure you're, you know, that's your ultimate goal and consideration. But do what's best for your facility and do what's best for your residents and staff as you move through these phases. A lot of things we want to keep in mind that, you know, we are going to ask that you we strongly advise this, that you follow CMS guidelines and VDH recommendations for their phase reopening. And we understand again that everybody's in a different area, a different phase, that there are different circumstances. So if you choose to move forward with reopening and you start to lessen your requirements maybe a bit more. We have outlined best practices. And, you know, as you look through the information that we sent out, one of the things that we hope to have on our website in the very near future, we have teams working on it. And again, if we're going to hopefully open up in the very, very near future as well. We've got a couple folks in mind that we want to have on our own little long-term care group. We want to get some field staff and some administrators that have experienced outbreaks and discuss some best practice information with you guys that have actually been through some of these issues, that we can really put some best practice into place and have for future reference. But we want to have some just one sheet, individual sheets of information. I'm trying to get the right term out there, that can be pulled off our website, that kind of just take into consideration all these different areas like staffing, physical distancing, visitors, and personal services, and that will go into a little bit more detail to help folks that may have a little bit more difficulty in trying to figure out how to implement some of these best practices, so that we can work with you and help as we move through the reopening phases. So I think those are some of the things that we have ahead that will help facilities. I know that, you know, LeadingAge and some of our other provider groups also have a lot of resources, but, you know, we keep saying that we really want DSS to be a resource for folks. So please just keep that in mind as we move through this. One of the big reminders for everyone is, again, your infection control plan. I think we outlined that in the memo, in the code. You know, just make sure that you're going through that you're looking at your infection control plans, that you are updating those, ensuring that you have your COVID strategy in place, and that you're looking at those in detail, because I can probably, with almost 100% certainty, say that you're probably going to be asked for those in the near future as we start to open up and as you start to see inspectors come back into your buildings. So those are things that we probably will be looking at and working through those types of things with you. So we're not going to be, you know, asking you to send those right away unless there's an issue, but we want to see that folks are looking at those and that you have a proper mitigation plan and mitigation strategies in place. But under that standard and under that code section, it just reminds you that you really have to follow the infection control programs, and that there is an obligation to follow and be consistent with what the CDC puts out there, as well as OSHA. And there's been a lot of discussion even about OSHA with bloodborne pathogens and things like that. So I'm sure that this group is probably well aware of that. I think we've come into contact with a lot of our smaller facilities that may not have, you know, the resources that you guys have through LeadingAge, that aren't as familiar with OSHA and some of their standards. So we just really want to make sure that we have that out there and that we're helping to educate folks on those types of things. So just really want to just give it kind of an overview. I'm sure that as we move through this, we're going to probably try to do some more in-depth types of education and work with our facilities and centers to, you know, assist with their mitigation strategies, and continue to work with the folks over at VDH. These guys have worked so hard, and we're just very grateful for what they're doing and very grateful for what you guys are doing. So again, we'll be available for questions. We'll probably have some FAQs that'll be coming out as we work through this. So, you know, just take a good look at this, and we, again, are here as a resource if you need us.
Thank you, Tara. Would you be willing to take some questions at this time? We have about 5 minutes left.
I'll do my best.
Okay, over to you, Melissa.
I hope I've got some of my peeps on the phone that can help. As you guys know, we've been going between adult and child care, so my brain hopefully can flip back and forth pretty quickly. So.
Well, and Tara, if you don't have the answer today, we'll make sure we email you the questions.
Yeah, we can get it to you. Just
yeah. Thank you.
Bear with me.
Oh no, and we appreciate you getting on at the last minute. So the first question that came in is, do assisted livings need to submit the change attestation form to VDH to open each phase?
So no, I don't think, VDH can weigh in a little bit more. I think it's good for folks to know what phase that they're in. And I think we would like to know that. I don't know that there's a requirement. Sarah, I don't know if you can answer that more specifically. Again, I think one of the things that we're trying to work through is there's a requirement that as you work through this, you're to really kind of make sure that you're obeying the guidelines and the recommendations that we have from the CDC. But there's, in terms of VDH, I think you're going to be looking at, in terms of an outbreak, that's going to be the more specific guidelines that need to be followed. I think it's always good practice to let not only VDH know, but us know, where you are in terms of what phase. I think it's just good to keep that communication open. I don't know if Sarah would have anything else to add to that.
Hi, Tara. This is Sarah. I agree with that. We're not asking for the assisted living facilities to send in the attestation forms, but the local health departments are certainly available to, continue that relationship you have with them at the local level. And certainly we would want to know about outbreaks and can advise on moving through the phases, but we don't need the form from the assisted living facilities.
Great, thank you. And the other question that came in, Tara, is what is the requirement expectation of DSS with respect to weekly testing of staff?
So again, there's no mandates. We're going to be looking for the testing that we'll have through the National Guard that'll be doing the point prevalence testing. I think we've got to revise a date in terms of that, and we'll try to work on getting that out. I know we talked a little bit this morning on the call that we had with the folks at with VDH and the locals. I mean, I don't know that we can specifically mandate that, but obviously we're going to highly recommend that if they can get testing that they do, especially in terms of just being able to know where facilities stand. I think anytime that they can have that opportunity to get that done, we want to see that happen. It's just, a little bit different for the assisted living and, in terms of mandates. But if the folks have the opportunity to get the point prevalence testing, which, that seems like that's going to be something that's offered. And again, I don't think we have the exact dates that it'll be available to assisted living just yet. We'll try to get those out, but because I do think the memo that we went out was, I think we had an error in our reporting in terms of the dates. We'll revise that soon.
Okay. Those were the only other questions that came in, Tara. So thank you so much. And I just say to our members, as you digest the guidance, if you have any questions, just email them to Dana and we'll pass them on. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tara. Much appreciated. So we are moving into our discussion about the nursing home reopening guidance. Thank you, Sarah, for taking all the questions that we provided you in advance. And as I mentioned, we are going to continue this discussion on our July 1st call, so you can continue to send questions. But over to you now, Sarah. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks. Yes, thanks for sending all your questions. We are trying to work through those. I certainly don't have answers to every single one today. One note I'll make is that we're getting questions from a lot of different folks, which we were anticipating since this is all new. So we are working on an FAQ document, and we're hoping to post that by the end of the week to the VDH Long-Term Care Task Force page. So, and that'll be sort of a living document where we can go in and add questions. So in addition to responding to emails and updating you all on these calls, for our goal is to post a whole FAQ document. So I will just start with sort of an overview. I believe you heard from both Virgie and Angela from my team last week. I just want to highlight a few things. I know everyone has probably seen the reopening guidance and talk about a few next steps, and then I can try to answer questions. So I'm sure that you all saw on Friday, June 19th, the press release. The nursing home guidance for phase 3 opening was released. And I also wanted, so I'm going to put that link in the chat for the phase 3 opening guidance. I'm sure you've seen it, but I'm just going to put it in the chat. And then I also wanted to make sure you all were aware that we did also update our document that's been there for a while. That is the VDH guidance for long-term care facilities. It's that longer guidance document with more infection control details. So that was also updated and posted on Friday to align with the reopening guidance. So if you haven't seen that, there weren't a lot of changes to that, but it aligns more with the reopening guidance and has some minor updates. I wanted to highlight a couple things. Obviously, you all are probably looking at phase 1, and I wanted to highlight a couple resources. So VDH is hosting, I'm going to put the link in the chat, train the trainer sessions for respiratory fit testing. So I just put the link there, and there's more information on the website about that. So that's open to nursing homes or assisted living facilities, really any facilities. And registration is free, but required. Seating is limited, but they will be able to open more sessions if there's a need. And when you go to the website, you can see there are different locations and dates already scheduled for this fit testing information, starting, I think, next week and going through the end of July. But like I said, they can schedule more sessions as needed. And on the website, there are details about what the attendees would need to have and bring with them and that kind of thing. It is a 2.5-hour training, and the goal is to train the staff member who would be responsible for the fit testing program in their facility to be trained and be able to start setting up sort of that respiratory protection program. If you have questions, there's a contact on the website. Donald Moore handles a lot of our larger training initiatives at VDH. His email address is on the website, and you can contact him, but I just wanted to make sure that you sort of were aware of that. There were questions, or Tara was mentioning the baseline testing that's ongoing with VANG, and it looks like Judy had a question about the end date for the National Guard. I agree, there's been a variety of dates on when the National Guard will conclude the surveys. I am pretty sure that they are wrapping up conducting testing in facilities mid-July. I think July 14th or 15th is what I heard yesterday. Carol, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe their actual deployment goes through the end of July, but they do have a period of time when they have to be self-quarantining, wrapping up, etc. So I believe they'll be in facilities through mid-July, and then their actual deployment ends at the end of July, but they have things that they have to do to end a deployment. So again, that baseline testing being offered with the support of the National Guard is available for nursing homes and assisted living facilities. So that is still an option for facilities if you haven't done that or haven't gotten signed up for that. We would be happy to connect you, or you can reach out to your local health department. And then I also wanted to mention, I believe Dana, am I correct that Angela Spleen last week presented to you all about the HHS teams that were coming to Virginia to do infection control surveys?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to give you all an update that that is starting as of today. So the teams have arrived in Virginia. We oriented them yesterday. We have 12 teams of 2 to 3 infection control nurses that are coming to Virginia. They're actually nurses from the Veterans Administration. And so they're on federal deployment to Virginia for the next 30 days. So that they're, like I said, here starting today through July 23rd or somewhere around that or around there. And the idea is they're visiting one facility per day to conduct sort of an in-depth assessment and provide education and training on site, sort of feedback. And so again, this is voluntary, but can satisfy that part of the phase reopening that you've done an infection prevention and control assessment. We have already started scheduling those. We have staff at VDH who are calling facilities to schedule those. If you haven't been called or haven't been able to schedule one of those, your best point of contact is Angela Spleen. She's on my team. I'll put her email in the chat. And so we have them, like I said, for about 30 days. So if you want to get that done, that would be great to take advantage of those teams. We're working closely with them and are really excited for that additional federal support. I know, let's see, let me look at my notes. Okay, so I know that there are a lot of questions about the baseline testing and what we're asking for. The long and short of it is that we're asking that all facilities, all nursing homes, so I'm going back to the nursing home guidance. I meant to say that those infection control assessments being done by the nurses who are here in Virginia for 30 days, that's open as well to both nursing homes and assisted living facilities. So I believe we've been calling both. Let's see, I'm just looking at what's in the chat. So Denise White asked, are there ongoing reporting requirements following the HHS inspection? I'm not sure what you mean about reporting requirements, but the HHS inspections are non-regulatory and non-mandatory. So that has nothing to do with like an OLC inspection, for example. That's more of what we would do along the epi lines of coming in and assessing infection control and working with you to figure out how to mitigate any barriers or things you're having issues with, to sort of provide direct feedback on site. So it's not any sort of ongoing relationship. It sounds like when they've deployed to other states, sometimes the facility has asked the team to come back again to help more. But like I said, those teams are only in Virginia for a short amount of time. So there's really nothing ongoing. So you clarified asking about daily line reports. So no, there would be nothing going back to those teams. Those teams are only in Virginia to help. So your ongoing communication would still just be with the local health department. And actually, in some instances, the local health department staff would like to accompany the teams on site to facilities. So that might happen in some cases. And again, that isn't regulatory, but more so our local health department staff here in Virginia can learn from infection control experts. I don't know if you all know, but we have Carol Jamerson and Rehab Abdul-Fada on our team at VDH, and they are infection control experts, but they can't possibly visit all facilities in the state. And so that's one reason we have these teams coming in, is to provide more infection control expertise. So no, there would be no ongoing reporting to those teams. That's just sort of a one-time thing to provide more expertise for you all. And just essentially to help us out. So they're working closely with VDH, possibly with the local health department too, and your ongoing communication would still just be with your local health department. So like I said, that's available for both nursing homes and assisted living facilities, and I can send more information to Dana on that so that she can sort of send that out to you all more broadly, because I definitely would like all facilities to take advantage of that if they would like over the next 30 days. So back to testing for a minute. We're getting a lot of questions about baseline testing and what we're asking for in the nursing home reopening guidance. So essentially, we're asking that every facility conduct testing of residents and staff at least 2 times, either before or during phase 1. So before you get to phase 2, we're asking that you did baseline testing or a point prevalence survey, whichever one you want to call it, and at least one other round of testing. Ideally, it would be a week later, but we realize many facilities did a point prevalence survey a while ago. You might not be able to accomplish testing 2 weeks in a row. It might take a couple weeks to do testing and then wait like 2 weeks to do another testing. So we realize the timing is challenging in terms of logistics, and we realize that every facility is in a little bit different place. So our main ask is that before you enter phase 2, you've tested residents and staff at least twice at some point. So if you've already done baseline testing, that like through the National Guard, for example, that would count once, and then we're asking your facility to test residents and staff again at least one more time before entering phase 2. So I hope that helps sort of clarify some of those questions about baseline testing. Let's see, what else was I going to mention? I don't know if folks have questions about the funding. That was sort of detailed in the press release. I'm not the funding expert, but I certainly can provide a little bit more detail on funding if that would be helpful. In terms of next steps, in addition to hopefully posting FAQs on our website this week, we're also trying to draft and work through and get feedback on what the testing recommendations will be for phases 2 and 3. And so we're also working on that right now. I don't have a date for when that would be put out. We're trying to see sort of how phase 1 goes. But I know folks are ready and waiting anxiously for that information. I think I'll stop there and see what questions are in the chat, and then I can talk a little bit about funding too, if that would be helpful. So Morris asks, does OLC agree with the VDH interpretation in their VDH guidance as it relates to OLC themselves? So the long and short of it is that, and I think this was reflected in the press release, is that this guidance put out by VDH, the nursing home reopening guidance, it was a collaborative effort from many people, including the Offices of Epidemiology and the Office of Licensure and Certification. So OLC is actually part of VDH. So this was collaborative. And so this is what we're all trying to go by. And it's sort of a marriage of CMS guidance, CDC guidance, OLC input, EPI input. But I believe Kim Beasley was also going to be on the phone. If you're on the phone, I don't know if you want to say anything to that question or not.
And
I'm
Kim,
here,
if you're
Sarah.
on, oh, great.
Yeah. I have the question. I'm not sure if there's a specific section that they're asking about, if OLC is in agreement, or if it's just the entire document that they're questioning. I'm a little bit unclear about the question. So,
Mo, if you're on and would like to unmute and clarify the question. Okay, I guess we'll just come back to that. We can get some more information to you. Oh, go ahead, Mo.
there he is.
Yes, I would like to know that whether or not that document that the OLC from a regulatory standpoint, agrees with everything on there so that we're not getting any mixed messages when it comes to certification purposes.
So my response to that would be that the information included in this document is guidance. It's not regulatory, it's guidance. So OLC would continue to follow the CMS requirements. We did suggest a couple of changes to wording in the document in certain sections. So again, if there's something in particular that you have in mind, but again, OLC and the local health departments have, even though we're both part of the same agency, we have a very different role. And so again, as Sarah said, this was a collaborative effort with information that's in the document. And again, I would say that the information in the document is guidance.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You also asked, is state defined in this context as any state agency? Does it matter if they are or should be the feds?
Certainly that's in the context of the CMS question related to the OLC issue that I have.
Sure.
What I'm questioning.
Okay. And the non-regulatory survey, the infection control survey, would meet the guidelines for the guidance for phase, is it phase 1 or phase 2? Phase 2, the infection prevention and control assessment has been completed. So that would meet that guidance. In terms of but that's non-regulatory, any OLC inspection would be separate from that.
So if we agree to have a non-regulatory infection control survey from the local health department, that will not count as any approval to move forward as it relates to checking that box that we've done an infection control survey, according to OLC?
It does check the box for having an assessment. Kim, do you want to speak to the targeted infection control surveys you all are doing? That's really not on the checklist for the phases.
Correct, it's not. So as Sarah said, that non-regulatory survey would meet the requirement on the reopening checklist. It does not take the place of a CMS required focused infection control survey.
So I guess the benefit, just to speak to the benefit of doing a non-regulatory infection control survey, is not only for preparedness within your facility and working on mitigating any gaps you might have, but also would potentially help you prepare for any sort of regulatory survey in terms of being in compliance with.
So we can do everything right, go through this infection control survey. If there's anything identified, fix that and open, but OLC can come behind us and do a CMS infection control survey and add citations. Is that how I understand that? If they find something that they don't like?
If we find something that's out of compliance with the regulations, yes, that could occur. And also keep in mind that included in the CMS guidance, the latest CMS guidance, there are criteria that are listed for possible repeat focused infection control surveys from OLC.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. There's a question from Rich about, please verify a positive staff member test does not trigger phase regression. So that's correct. The way we were thinking about this is that our concern is any transmission that occurs within the facility. And so a nursing home on-site case in a resident would trigger a phase regression. But if there is a positive staff member, especially if it's just seems to be sort of a random or one-time occurrence in terms of, you know, a single staff member testing positive, or maybe even a couple of staff members testing positive who don't share work exposures, that kind of thing, then we would essentially assume that that staff member testing positive is probably a community transmission event and doesn't indicate transmission in the facility. So a single positive staff member would not trigger a phase regression. However, we are encouraging ongoing communication with your local health department. I know many of you are working closely with the local health department. If there seem to be a large number of staff cases, and it seems like that's pointing to transmission in the facility, then certainly that would be a discussion about a possible phase regression or not moving forward. But essentially what we're looking for is, you know, is transmission occurring within the facility? And then that's when we would ask for a phase regression. Okay. Does the CMS self-assessment, I'm looking at Paula's question, does the CMS self-assessment tool meet the requirement for infection prevention and control assessment for phase 2? So there's information towards the bottom of the reopening guidance about what counts for that, and just doing a self-assessment is not what we were getting at. So we're asking for something where someone has either via telehealth or on-site done, somebody outside your facility has done an assessment with you. Hold on, I'm looking for it. So assessment could be conducted remotely or on-site by members from various state or federal agencies. Like some of you did the CDC tele-ICAR. About 50 facilities in Virginia did that. That would count. An assessment with these HHS teams would count. If your local health department came and did an infection control assessment recently, that would count. But doing a self-assessment isn't what we were looking for. Okay, Ryan asked, will we be notified if we are approved to be in phase 1? Is the attestation a request to the local health department or a statement that this is what we were doing? So that's a good question. Again, like Kim was saying, all of this is recommendation. And essentially we're asking facilities to self-assess their readiness to move into the next phase and submit the attestation form to their local health department. Again, to keep that line of communication open with your local health department like you've been doing during outbreaks and, you know, as we've been moving through this pandemic together. And so we're trying to sort of keep tabs on where nursing homes are, look to see if, you know, the reopening guidance is working, if it makes sense. Like I said, we're looking for feedback on the testing requirements before we get to phases 2 and 3. And so we're really looking at this as a partnership with you all to try to move through this as best we can, despite the fact that, you know, this is all new for everyone. So the attestation isn't really a request to the local health department, but more of a statement that you have assessed your readiness in your facility and that you're ready to move on to the next phase. In terms of being approved to be in phase 1, I don't think that we've heard from many facilities yet this week that they have moved into phase 1. So if that's where your facility is, if you could go ahead and submit that attestation form to say that you're in phase 1, that would be really helpful. You can do that using that link or you can submit a paper form and either email or fax that. I believe all those instructions are in the reopening guidance. But like I said, we've only heard from maybe 1 or 2 facilities so far statewide, and so we're sort of assuming that most facilities are in phase 1, but if you could go ahead and submit the form, that would be really helpful for us. Jennifer asked, what guidance for team members who refuse to test? What are recommended next steps? Kim, would you like to answer that question?
Yes. So obviously, we cannot require staff or residents to be tested if they refuse. But in that case, we would be looking back to the facility to have a plan or a policy as to how they would handle that type of situation and what type of action or mitigation that they would be putting in place to address that.
Okay, thanks. Sue asked that the point prevalence survey strategy has an option of testing 20% and then another 20%. Yeah, we realize that it says that. We're considering that as a potential option in future phases. Again, we're sort of looking at what makes sense for phases 2 and 3, but the idea for phase 1 or now and going into phase 1 is that you're testing all residents and staff. And again, because again, that gets the sort of community transmission and ongoing risk in the community leading to transmission in your facility. So right now we're asking that all residents and all staff be tested and looking at other options for phases 2 and 3. David says, with respect to return to work for staff who have tested positive, CDC has provided clear guidance on symptom and time-based strategy, symptom, time-based strategy, and test-based strategy. Why are some local health departments requiring the test-based strategy before staff are able to return to work? That's a good question. Really, either option is potentially viable. In terms of healthcare workers, CDC has changed their website so much, I don't know specifically exactly what it says right at this moment, but CDC has sort of said in the past, as we've been moving through this, that the preference for healthcare workers is to use the test-based strategy, again, because they're working with vulnerable populations. But I mean, that could certainly be a discussion for your facility in terms of what makes the most sense. We know many facilities were using the symptom-based strategy or the symptom/time-based strategy when not as much testing was available. We certainly have, testing resources have increased. And so again, we would recommend the test-based strategy for healthcare workers specifically. The other strategy might be more relevant for, those in the public who are not healthcare workers. I don't know, Carol, are you on the phone? Do you have anything to add to that?
And Carol, you would need to unmute yourself, *6.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I was looking at our long-term care guidance document, which was also released and updated on the 19th. And on page 21 of that 25-page document, we do address, on page, we do address the 2 criteria for healthcare workers returning to work. So I think what I'm hearing in your question, though, is maybe you're getting conflicting information from your local health department, and maybe if you could email Sarah or I directly and just share with us a little more details, we could reach out to the health department and understand exactly if, what's being said and why, and get back with you with a more specific answer. But yes, we do have both strategies listed, just as Sarah described.
Here, thanks, Carol. I'll put my email in the chat. Okay. Another question, what resources are available to us for off-site employee testing? So after the baseline testing, we're essentially asking facilities to conduct testing of residents and staff for that sort of second weekly round of testing. I think facilities are doing that in different ways. You might have a contract with a lab who's offering testing. So in terms, maybe this is a good place for me to just mention funding. So the funding was announced in the press release on Friday. Dana, would it be helpful for me to give a little more detail on that funding?
Yeah, absolutely. We're planning to summarize it today in our update, but if you'd like to just provide a quick overview, that'd be great.
Okay, so for nursing homes, testing and staffing are priority for additional funding coming to nursing homes. And so that's an area where, that would be a funding resource. So essentially nursing homes will be receiving $226 million. I believe I'm correct in saying that will all be administered through DMAS. Nursing homes have been receiving $20 per patient per day. That will increase by $7 to be $27 per patient per day for a 4-month period. It's anticipated that the cost of testing residents will be primarily paid by Medicare, but that funding, the $27 per patient per day, can cover additional costs related to testing. It can also cover staffing, PPE, and cleaning supplies. There's also an outbreak response rate of $80 per patient per day. That's in addition to the $27 per patient per day, and that would be for the outbreak period and maybe up to 90 days, I believe. And then there's an additional pot of money for funding for staff testing specifically, again, beyond the baseline testing. So there's a whole list of allowable expenses for this nursing home funding, again, with priority given to testing and staffing. Funding can go towards employee wages, overtime pay, bonuses, employee benefits, employee child care costs, employee isolation housing, costs related to screening visitors, PPE and other supplies, cleaning supplies, telehealth costs, technology required for socializing residents, resident transfer costs, and other COVID-19 related expenditures. So that's for nursing homes. And then for assisted living facilities, there's $20 million. I don't know, Tara, are you still on the line? Is that all being administered through DSS? Or Dana, you might know.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's actually going to be administered through DMAS and
Okay.
through DARS. I don't think we have quite figured out exactly how that's going to be done just yet. We're still working on that.
Thanks. But just a little bit of detail on that $20 million. ALFs will receive $4,000 per facility per month for a 4-month period, and an additional daily payment of $15 per auxiliary grant resident per day for a 4-month period. So funding in ALF can be used for testing, staff, PPE, and cleaning supplies. So that's just a little overview on funding. If people have questions about funding, I might not be able to answer them, but I can take them back. Okay, let's see. I'm going down the line. If we had a point, Gary asked if we had a point problem survey in May. And then you've had a couple employees test positive. Can we still consider the May prevalence testing as a starting baseline given the new guidance? Yes, it's certainly imperfect that a baseline testing done more than a couple weeks ago is sort of used as the baseline, but we understand and logistically cannot commit to doing baseline testing in all facilities in the same week or two. So yes, you can use that as baseline testing, and then we would ask, as I said, for you to do at least one more round of testing all residents and staff during phase one. There's another question. Will the CMS focused infection control survey count as the requirement? When you say the CMS focused infection control survey, do you mean the self-assessment? Oh, you mean the OLC survey. Yes, Kim, I believe, Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the OLC focused infection control survey would count as for phase two, for the phase two infection control assessment. I believe that that's what we put in the guidance.
Yes, it would have to be an on-site in order to count. An on-site focused infection control survey.
Great. The online attestation form is only 4 questions, but the paper version is 2 pages with a checklist. So I can go back and look at it. I think we got that question yesterday, and I didn't go back and look at it. I believe the online form sort of expands as you go through the questions. If that isn't the case, yeah. So I would just encourage you, if you haven't looked at the REDCap form, like when you click on, so when you go to the online form, when you select the option that you're progressing to the next phase, then it asks you which phase, and then there's like this entire drop down. So the REDCap form is sort of a smart form. So we developed, we put stuff on the back end. So it depends on check in terms of what you get, the questions you get next, but it matches, the intent is that it matches the paper form. So it's not just 4 questions. It might look like that in the beginning, but I promise you that it matches, it should match the paper form. Okay, Stuart says, practically speaking, it could be impossible to test all the same residents and all the same staff in 2 weekly cycles because of admissions and discharge and schedules and vacation, jury duty, etc. How precise is this expected to be? I'm reading the rest of your question. Yeah, we know, I mean, logistically, we know this is challenging. And so again, I'll just reiterate that we're asking that you do 2 rounds of testing staff and residents before you enter phase 2. So we certainly understand that, you know, you might not be able to test all staff on one day. So it might take a couple of days for you to test all staff. We certainly recognize not everybody's there the same day. People are on different shifts, etc. So this isn't mean to be so prescriptive that you can't get it done logistically. We certainly, I mean, we've done this. We definitely understand the logistics are challenging. So we're just asking that you try to test all staff and all residents twice before entering phase 2. It doesn't have to be exactly 7 days apart. That would be the recommendation from CDC. But again, if it's 2 weeks apart, if it's more than that, that's fine. Can you share some best practices around improved family visitation during phase 1 and 2? The guidance says outside or plexiglass visits may be approved depending on facility policy. I think, Dana, do you have any, I think I would look to other facilities to provide some examples. I know we've heard on these calls and other calls some really good examples of how facilities have been able to do that. Do you have anything to share?
Well, I can say that we can compile some best practices from our membership. I don't want to take up too much time now, but we can share that with the members. It's a great question.
And Sarah, this is Carol. We are addressing that in our FAQ document as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some good examples on how to do that. Again, try not to make the guidance too prescriptive. Every facility is set up a little bit differently, but certainly encourage you to see what other facilities are doing and how to make that work. Okay, Dana, I think I've answered all the questions in the chat. I know I haven't answered all the questions that you had previously sent, so we can continue this either, you know, via email or next week as well.
Well, this has been just wonderful information. We did have one question come in, if you would like to address that. And as I mentioned earlier, our next call will be completely focused on the nursing home guidance. So if you would like to take that last question, but Sarah, this has been really, really helpful.
Okay, Kim, the last question is from Tammy. We had the CMS desk review infection control survey in April, a follow-up CMS walkthrough in June, so maybe that was CMS federal employees. Does that count as phase 2 infection prevention and control assessment? I would think it probably does. Kim, do you have an opinion on that?
I would, when she says walkthrough, I would need to know whether she's referring to the actual on-site portion of the focused infection control survey.
Yeah, Tammy, it might be good if you email Kim, or you can follow up with me and we can just sort of talk through your specific experience.
Yeah,
Okay.
if it was the actual on-site portion of the survey, then they're good to go.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you, Kim, for being on, and thank you, Tara, if you're still on. This has been really great. We'll continue. We know you all are really working 24/7. We will give you a recap of the questions today, just as they may assist with your FAQ, and continue to provide questions to you all as we receive them to go over on our July 1st call, which will be at 11 a.m. But thanks again, everyone, for being on, and thanks so much, Sarah. We really appreciate it. Have a great week, everyone.